program on the west side of the state. Actually, the 21st Century Scholarship is the reason why I came to Indiana to work with the program. So very happy to give this update today on both these items. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We are recording this session, so this will be recorded and shared after the fact. Second, the chat is open. Allison Kerr will be running the chat and helping out with the questions that we have today. You may hear her jump in every once in a while, and if you see me to look off screen, that's because she's in the room as well. Additionally, want to say for some of the individuals I can see who are attending, some of my colleagues who are in the financial aid profession, the FAFSA update will be as informative as what you've seen in the FSA sessions, but I will not be providing any new information outside of that. So just as a quick heads up for those of you who are in the financial aid community. And with that said, we'll leave time for questions at the end, and any moment in time that Allison feels like I should stop and answer something in the moment, we will go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. This is the first time we've used this platform, so appreciate you bearing with me. You might see a picture of my children here. So with that, Allison, can you confirm? All right. Looks like we're good to go. So again, my name is Josh Garrison, Senior Associate Commissioner and Chief of Staff, and today we'll be talking about two of the bigger items to come across higher education in the last year, the automatic enrollment of the 21st Century Scholars and the updated, what's being called Better FAFSA. I want to start out by saying that I believe that the automatic enrollment of scholars will be the most impactful piece of legislation that I had the opportunity to be a part of in my time with the commission. I've been here for 10 years, and if I'm here for another 30 years, I don't imagine we'll see another piece of legislation which will have as much impact on our students' lives as this one. It really is a transformative step in the program, and we are unbelievably excited and privileged at the commission to be able to implement this with all of you in the field, both at our middle school, high school, and at our college level. So with that, a quick update of what the 21st Century Scholarship is. I think everyone on here should know, but if you don't, the 21st Century Scholarship was established in 1990 by Governor Evan Bayh, and it was focused on increasing the number of students who wanted to go to post-secondary education. It's an early promise program allowing them to know that post-secondary education, not just a four-year degree, but a two-year degree and a short-term certificate are all available to our students regardless of their income level. Now, you do have to be income eligible, and that's defined as eligible for free and reduced lunch, and we'll talk about in a little bit how we're going to handle identifying those students who are on free and reduced lunch. And you have to be in the 7th or 8th grade. There is one exception for students who are in the foster care program. They can be enrolled all throughout high school. Additionally, students who miss enrollment periods can appeal. So if you have a student who, for one reason or another, was not automatic enrolled, did not complete an application on their own, or face some other issue, we can work through an appeals process. However, if there is an income change at the high school level, that cannot be addressed through the appeals. Scholars who agree to and live up to what we call the Scholar Pledge can earn up to 4 years of tuition at an Indiana college. And since the beginning of the program, we know many more than 50,000 students have earned some sort of degree or credential through the assistance of the 21st Century Scholarship. Again, it pays up to 4 years at a public college. So it'll pay for up to 4 years. It's full tuition and mandatory fees. Doesn't pay for things like books, residence hall costs, fees associated to specific classes, but fees are charged to everyone do apply. It pays partial tuition at our private colleges and our proprietary colleges or for-profit institutions. At our private colleges, it pays the average cost to attend our 4-year public institutions. And this year, I think it's right around $10,000. For our proprietary institutions, it pays what it costs to go to Ivy Tech. So at our for-profits, it's the same amount as a student would receive at Ivy Tech Community College. As I mentioned earlier, students have to agree to the Scholar Pledge and certain requirements. So I want to cover those quickly before we talk about the importance of the program and what we're doing to auto-enroll students. Students must be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen and an Indiana resident. Now, a student who is a non-citizen, as long as they're gain citizenship before they graduate high school, they can still access the scholarship. So this does allow certain students to enroll and then work towards achieving the citizenship requirement. They have to either be enrolled through our automatic enrollment process, but we will always have an application that students can complete to enroll themselves if for some reason they're not picked up. And we do imagine that being very few. We'll talk about that in a minute. Agree to the Scholar Pledge Edge. They have to do that via Scholar Track. That is our financial aid delivery system where students monitor their 21st century scholarship progress, as well as their other financial aid opportunities here at the state. They have to graduate with a cumulative 2.5 GPA. It is a cumulative GPA. It is not an annual GPA. So I really want to strongly encourage the counselors who are on this, that if a student is below a 2.5 their freshman year, if they're below a 2 their freshman year, still have them participate in scholar activities. All too often we're told by students that they're no longer being included in scholarship opportunities because they have a below 2.0 or a below 2.5 their freshman year. We understand that it may be difficult for some of these students to regain eligibility, but we don't want to lose them, and we definitely don't want them removed from the program because they do have an opportunity to improve their GPA. Students must also complete the Scholar Success Program and Scholar Track. Those are 12 items that a student has to do, all items that my own children will do whenever they're preparing for a post-secondary education. It's 3 per year, and students can make those up. There are items like a workplace experience, taking the ACT, filing the FAFSA, applying for college, all items that you have to do if you want to enroll in post-secondary education. Students must graduate with at least a Core 40 diploma. They have to file the FAFSA as mentioned by April 15th or whatever our deadline ends up being. We'll talk about that again with the FAFSA section. And attend college and file the FAFSA each year they attend college. Additionally, they have to have 1 year to enroll full-time, and it's 1 year from graduation. So a student graduating this year in 2024 will have until the fall of 2025 to enroll full-time at an eligible college or institution. Why does this matter? Why is this important? Well, in Indiana, we've seen a precipitous drop in our college going rate. Just a few years ago, we were at 68% of students going on to some sort of post-secondary education. That number includes 1 year short-term certificates all the way up to a 4-year degree. By 2021, we are down to 53% of students, and that's of high school graduates. And we know that roughly 10 to 12% of our students do not even graduate high school. We are working diligently to address this, and we are seeing positive signs for the college going rate for this year and in the coming years. But this means a lot of students have been left behind. Now, we often hear that maybe a post-secondary education isn't worth it. Maybe it's not, it costs too much, or there's other problems with going on to seek further education. But what we've seen is that it's impacting individuals differently. For our higher income students, 60% go on to some sort of post-secondary education. For our low-income non-scholars, only 30% pursue something beyond high school, with 81% of scholars going on to attend college after high school. They're 20 percentage points more likely than their high income peers even, and that makes sense. We've given them this pathway. And the reason it's important is because we know that from economic and social outcomes that students who attend some sort of post-secondary education have increased wages, higher net worth, higher labor force participation rates, and lower unemployment, which is all good for not just the individual, but for the state of Indiana as a whole and for our communities that we live in. So on to why many of you attended the session today, talking about 21st Century Scholarship auto enrollment. HA 1449 of this last legislative session required the commission in partnership with DOE to identify income eligible students and enroll them in the 21st Century Scholarship. The commission is required to notify them of their eligibility, that they've been auto-enrolled, and give them the opportunity to opt out of the program. Now, this was huge because prior to automatic enrollment, we had less than half of eligible students enrolling in the program. And at our highest need schools, we saw well below less than half of their students enrolling in the program. We were able to, through the information the Department of Education provided us with, enroll a significantly larger number this year. We enrolled financially eligible students in the 2027 and 2028 cohort. That is our current freshman class and the current 8th grade class. I'll touch in a minute on what we're doing with the 7th grade, because that's going to take a second for us to finalize a few of those individuals. For the class of 2027, prior to auto enrollment, so if we look at just those who self-enrolled in the program, and we were at roughly 19,000, below 20,000 students actually enrolling in the 21st Century Scholarship at the time of automatic enrollment. After automatic enrollment, over 40,000 students were enrolled. We more than doubled our population of 21st Century Scholars for the class of 2027. This means that more than 20,000 students have the opportunity to pursue something beyond high school. And I know the counselors in this call, I know the financial aid professionals in this call, and the people in my office have dealt with hundreds, if not thousands, of phone calls of students who call us at the end of their senior year and say, hey, I wanted to be a 21st Century Scholar, nobody enrolled me. I thought I was a 21st Century Scholar, but nobody enrolled me. And what we're looking forward to is not having to answer those calls and have those students be so heartbroken about how they're going to afford a post-secondary education, and actually see those students move on and live up to their potential. For the students who were automatically enrolled, they will show as approved pending student pledge and ScholarTrack. So for our high school counselors and our middle school counselors, you can pull right now in ScholarTrack your cohort 2027 and your cohort 2028, and you can see who is approved. That means that they were either self-enrolled and agreed to the pledge, or that they've created a ScholarTrack account and agreed to the pledge, or those who are approving pledge, which means they've been automatically enrolled but have not taken that step to say they want the scholarship, the final step. We really want to know if you find students who are not, or who are eligible but we did not automatically enroll. But it is very important that it not just be hypotheticals. We continuously receive, well, we think you may be missing this student or this type of student. We think you may be missing this type of student, but we're not receiving an actual student that we've missed yet. So if you're reaching out to our outreach coordinators, if you're reaching out to us at the commission itself, please let us know specific students. We want to help those students. We will find a way to enroll those students, but make sure it is a student that you can see on your roster that has not been included. And we will do everything we can to either, one, automatically enroll them or walk them through the application process. But as I said previously, and you'll see here in the actual hard numbers here in a second, we're well over 40,000 for the class of 2027. And when you think about a high school class, it is roughly 80,000 students with around half on free and reduced lunch. We have found most of these students. The 2027 cohorts and 2028 cohort will receive a letter about automatic enrollment in the coming weeks. Future years, that'll happen earlier in October. First year, we have to be able to ingest the correct addresses from what the middle schools and high schools report to the Department of Education. It's taken a moment to get that technical process fixed, but they'll see a letter here in the coming weeks. We will also share that letter across Counselor Talk and with our colleagues. It'll also be on our website for individuals to review. So when a student comes in and says, hey, I got this letter about the 21st Century Scholarship, our counselors aren't caught flat-footed in not knowing what that is. Additionally, students who are not automatically enrolled in ScholarTrack will be able to enroll or automatically enroll will be able to enroll in an application after October 1st each year. That application will be open. Again, this year, first year is always a little bit different. So you'll see that application open up on October 1st. So we have a convening here in Marion County called College Matters. And we had it last Thursday, bringing in organization or high schools and community-based organizations across the state to see what we can do to help increase FAFSA filing rates, to increase the number of students going on to post-secondary education. And what that caused us to do is to look at more closely those specific schools and see what their current seniors, how many seniors were 21st Century Scholars, and then how many of their current freshmen were 21st Century Scholars, how many of the 2027 cohort had accepted the pledge and were approved, and how many still needed to accept the pledge. It was a great exercise to go through with each of those schools, and I think it's something that would be good for you all who are in the middle school and high school level to look at your cohorts and do this, and so you can reach out to these students and make sure they're taking a step. So to give you an idea of what that looks like statewide, right now in the class of 2024, the current high school seniors, approximately 15,000 scholars are still eligible and in the program. Now, we know we start with anywhere between 18,000 and 20,000 each year. Students move out of state, students decline the scholarship, students drop out. There are numerous reasons why that number shrinks. And we know that the 46,000 number for 2027 will shrink. But right now we have 20,000 approved scholars approximately. I think it's a shade over that right now. And then about 26,000 scholars are approved pending pledge. We know that not all of that 26,000 approved pending pledge will accept the pledge for a number of reasons. Some moving out of state, some not being eligible for other reasons. But we would really appreciate our high school partners working with our outreach coordinators and the commission to make sure students are going into Scholar Track and accepting the Scholar Pledge. To do that, though, students must be 13. Under federal law, you cannot create an online account like this, a Scholar Track account or other accounts, until you're of age 13. Additionally, by the end of their freshman year, these students, besides accepting the pledge, we would like to see them upgrade their account by adding an SSN sometime during high school. Freshman year, great. Sophomore year, great. Definitely by senior year. That's how we're going to pair it with the FAFSA. And then update their Scholar Track account eventually to a non-school-based email. We often see our 21st century scholars use the emails that are provided in middle school and high school. And when they graduate high school, they lose that email, and then they have a hard time following up with information and reaching or accessing information about their scholarship. Additionally, oftentimes schools, for very good reasons, have filters on what emails can go to students. We would greatly appreciate any school approve or safe list our emails, those that end in @ and you can see that I'm not going to read you the URLs there, but you can see what it looks like there. So we would appreciate you safe lifting those so we can reach out. We will not inundate your students with emails. We will only reach out about items that they need to complete for their scholarship and earn this great opportunity. One other thing I want to address before we move on to questions in the FAFSA are how are we automatically enrolling these students? We get this question all the time, especially in light of now that textbook materials are free. So for the classes of 2028, 2027, 2028, and 2029, we will have holdover information around either free and reduced lunch or at community eligible schools. Community eligible schools, for those of you that don't know, are schools where all students are on free and reduced lunch. We used book eligibility at that point in time. We are working right now on a data share agreement to update the source of that information. We have plenty of time to finalize that. We have, as I mentioned, we've already enrolled 2 cohorts. We will be enrolling the cohort of 2029 here shortly with the information that we do have, but we will be working on addressing these other other ways of identifying students. We need to do that at schools that who do enroll all their students in free and reduced lunch, because if that's the case, we will miss students. But we have other means of taking care of that. And I understand that's caused quite a few questions on process, and I'm happy to sit down with anyone and talk about this the full process and walk you through how we do it in Scholar Track without PII. But just know that we have taken care of the first 3 cohorts, and we are working through the data share agreement. If we do need anything additional from schools, we will reach out to you at that point in time. Please do not build a process for identifying these students yet until we say, hey, there's an issue. We do not anticipate that, but I did want to address that before we move on to FAFSA. With that said, I'm going to pause at this moment in time and ask Allison to share any questions that we have that she thinks needs to be addressed now before we move on. Allison. Okay, isn't that neat? I've never seen this. Yeah. It pops up. All right. If a 21st century scholar eligible student goes to an out-of-state school for their first semester of college and transfers back to a qualifying school second semester, would they still be eligible for the 21st century scholarship? Yes. They need to enroll in an eligible institution within 1 year of high school. So if they're back within that 1 year, additionally, we have a unique circumstance where a student has earned so much scholarship money, they actually can't use the 21st century scholarship. We love it when we see that. As long as they were enrolled in an eligible institution, we can give them back their scholarship whenever their early scholarship other money runs out. So yes, as long as they're back here within 1 year, we're good to go. Can you please restate what you said about appealing if they did not get an application submitted before the deadline. Yep. So we have an appeals process that parents and students can access via ScholarTrack. So if they did not get something submitted before the deadline and they have a reason for that, not getting that submitted, oftentimes we'll see students of parents who are incarcerated or who are working their way through some sort of family issue miss the deadline and an appeal. It is not good enough, to be frank, that a student just didn't do it or forgot or anything along those lines. There has to be an actual reason why they missed the deadline at that point. As heartbreaking as that is for me and our team when we process these, there has to be a reason, but that is all done in ScholarTrack. And if you have a question about that, we can also, you'll have my contact information, shoot me an email. I can have the team walk somebody through it. Is there any reason a student's eligibility would change between auto enrollment and a student starting college? Some families don't think they actually qualify. So yes, there is a chance, and it's very, very rare. Unfortunately, it's very rare that a student loses a scholarship. And I say it's unfortunate because they have to increase their family income by so much that it doesn't happen that often. We have what's called the financial means test. And a student can lose their scholarship if their income increases so much. So right now it's based on free and reduced lunch. The financial means test is based on whatever the choice scholarship eligibility will be going forward. So it's unlikely, and most scholars do not lose eligibility. Now, if a student, let's say they start out in a situation where they don't financially qualify, but they've had an unfortunate family circumstance that has them now financially eligible, they can't enroll if they've already enrolled in high school. But one of the good things that we have, and Commissioner Lowry mentioned this during his chat with the governor this morning, is that we have an increase in what's called the Franco-Bannon grant. It's kind of like the Indiana Pell Grant that covers a large portion of tuition and fees. At a public institution, the Franco-Bannon grant for the highest need students is over $6,000. This, combined with Pell, means the student would have roughly $13,000 for their post-secondary education. So even if they do not, or if they are not able to access the 21st Century Scholarship, Indiana is one of the most generous need-based financial aid states in the nation, and there are other avenues for that student to pursue. A couple more questions, and we'll need to move on to the FAFSA. We have many, many students in our districts who are non-U.S. citizens. What steps do they need to take in middle school to enroll in the program? So with that, a student who is a non-citizen who, as I mentioned, they can either be automatically enrolled as long as they have an STN and they're part of that process. They'll be automatically enrolled. If they're not automatically enrolled in that process, through that, they can use their STN to enroll. We'll have to verify income and items like that. Again, they have to be citizens by the time they use the scholarship. So the scholarship funds cannot go to a non-citizen per state law on that one. So as long as they're on your roster, they are showing as having financial need in the DOE report, we will automatically enroll them. The letter that we send out and other communications will also make it very clear to families that they have to be eligible by their senior year or by the time they enroll in college. We will also have these forms in multiple languages for students as well. And then one final question before we go on to FAFSAs, because I want to make sure we have time. Students who are listed as approved but unverified, are these students actually scholars? And is there anything that the school or parents need to do? Yeah, so for the unverified students, that just means under the old model, we have not yet verified their income eligibility with the Department of Revenue. They still should move forward. The only way that they would be removed is if the information they provided on the 21st Century Scholarship application was inaccurate. So if they said they were financially eligible and they actually weren't via their taxes, they will be eventually removed. There's nothing that they need to, at least at this point in time, do. And we can also work with them on an appeals process if they are removed, so long as they were actually financially eligible. So nothing they really need to do or worry about. That is a back-end process of us verifying them with the Department of Revenue. And with that, I will take as many questions at the end as I can, but I do want to move on to the FAFSA portion of this. So the quick FAFSA update, and I'll get through, I'll move, I know I talk pretty quickly, so I'll talk even faster on the second half because there's a lot of information about the FAFSA. Matter of fact, I got a call from a colleague in New York at 10 o'clock last night about the FAFSA opening. So those of us in the financial aid community, this has kind of been all-encompassing in the last year trying to get prepared for it. And unfortunately, we're finding out most of the information in the last 2 weeks before it's supposed to launch. So with that, if you don't know what the FAFSA is, it is the free application for federal student aid, and it determines eligibility for federal funds, state funds, and some institutional and merit-based aid. For the last 6 years or so, the FAFSA has opened on October 1st. Prior to that, whenever I was in college and when probably many of you were in college, it actually opened on January 1st. Well, it's been nice to have it open on October 1st these past 5, 6, 7 years. However, due to the updates to the FAFSA, it has been delayed until they say no later than December 31st. We actually haven't got a firm launch date of when the FAFSA will go live. If you did not know, Indiana's priority deadline for financial aid is April 15th. We will be monitoring FAFSA filing rates and what it looks like to see if we will extend that. We have been extending it the past few years due to low FAFSA filing rates, but we anticipate a significant increase this year in the number of students who do file the FAFSA. So with that, I want to cover some of the bigger changes, and I would encourage you to invite our outreach coordinators, InvestEd, your local financial aid offices to your schools to discuss this with you if you have not done that. They are all great resources for your students and for your staff to learn about the FAFSA generally and what has changed. So first, the EFC, or expected family contribution, has historically been the number that's been used to determine need-based eligibility for financial aid. The federal government is changing, or the Department of Education is changing the term expected family contribution to the word student aid index. I actually think this is a better term because if you read the actual definition of expected family contribution, they quote in there that it is not the amount that your family is expected to contribute. So it is exactly the opposite of what the name would suggest. So the changing to the SAI is that portion is purely a language change, and I know we'll all eventually get comfortable with that. May take 4 or 5 years, like when we switched calling dorms to residence halls, but we'll all get there. The thing that they did change that is substantive is the way that it's calculated. Now the lowest EFC value was 0, but now the SAI goes to negative 1,500. The idea was that so many students were bucketed at that 0 EFC that institutions and states could not decide in that 0 range who had greater need and where to focus need-based aid. With that said, it's unlikely that many institutions will do a lot with that negative 1,500 different than 0. And we here at the state of Indiana, when we look at our like Franco-Bannon grant and our other need-based aid outside of scholars, we're still debating and trying to figure out what that will look like for those programs, because we do not have live data, and we will not have live data until February 1st, which we'll cover here in a minute. Next, big change that a lot of individuals have been there's received a lot of attention is that the EFC traditionally was reduced when you had multiple students in college. I have an identical twin brother. Whenever I was in college, our EFCs were divided in half. So it was exactly the same information. For the most part, they divided in half between the two of us on the parent contribution side. The SAI, the Student Aid Index, will not be reduced when the number in college increases. So they're not going to adjust for the number in college. However, there will be minimal impact from this. I didn't say no impact, but there will be minimal impact because the new need-based formula that the Department of Education is using is much more generous than historically. They think that we could have as many as 30%, 33% more full Pell students in the pipeline. So we are going to see quite a few more students moving into higher need areas. However, there will be students that are impacted. There's no question. Now, hopefully it's a very, very small number. Students who are impacted can seek what's called a professional judgment. So they'll have to reach out to their financial aid offices at the institution that they attend to have them try to address this issue for them. It's not something that we can do at the state. It's something that unfortunately has been put on the backs of our already burdened financial aid counselors across the state. And for those of you that are on there, we do appreciate all the work that you have done to prepare for this. The next change is how around assets. And historically, small business and family farm assets were excluded on the FAFSA. They are no longer excluded. They have to be reported on that. Now, there are 3 exceptions for a student who's a maximum Pell Grant recipient through a separate calculation of AGI less than $60,000, or the parent or the student receives other means tested benefits, TANF, SNAP, WIC, something along those lines. They don't have to report assets at that, for those. There's legislation right now trying to address this issue with moving through Congress. 1 second. Allison, everything okay? All right. Okay. Next change is that if you filed the FAFSA before, you know you've got something called the SAR, the Student Aid Report. This including information around what was put on the FAFSA, what was submitted to the federal government. They're changing the name of the SAR to the FAFSA Submission Summary, which again, kind of like Student Aid Index, I think this is a much better term on what it is, because it is a summary of what you submitted on the FAFSA. Nobody really knew what the SAR was when they received that. I think this is a positive change. The next item is about how income will be included in the FAFSA. FAFSA filers for the 23, 24, and prior FAFSAs had the option to pull their information into the FAFSA through what's called the IRS data retrieval tool. So students would and parents would select to go out to the IRS website and enter their information in, and it would pull all that information into the FAFSA, the exact numbers that you had, all of that. This is changing due to what's called the Future Act. And they're changing the IRS DRT, data retrieval tool, to something called the FADEX. That is the Future Act Direct Data Exchange. Not sure how they got the acronym on that one, but it's going to be called the FADEX going forward. Individuals will not go to a separate website. Individuals will not be able to see the information that is put on the FAFSA around income because the IRS will send that information directly to the Department of Education. Parents and students have to consent to this. This is something that the student and the parent will consent to the IRS sharing this information. If there is no consent to share, the student will not receive aid, will not be able to file the FAFSA at that point in time. It's different in that you don't have to go out and get the information and pull it in the FAFSA, but it is a different process that individuals do have to consent to having this information sent to the IRS. With that said, there's also a change in the language around what individuals are called on the FAFSA. So individuals are now each considered a contributor. So a student or the applicant themselves, the parent, the step parent, the parent who is in marrying, filing separately situations, or a student spouse are all considered a contributor. They will all have to have individual logins with an FSA ID and identify what the role is in the process. Students or parents can enter information in for another person. It is not encouraged because they do require consent. So they're going to have to consent and be part of it. So, and that will be all done through an email process. In addition to the consent aspect of it all, there is a change to how the parent is identified. So we stole this flow chart. I don't know who created it, but it was absolutely great. So I appreciate if you're on the call or the webinar if you created it. It walks through how a parent is selected. So the biggest change has to do with divorced, separated, unmarried, or parents not living together. That being that it's who provided the most financial support in the last 12 months, not who the individual student spends the most of their time with or anything along those lines. That will cause some headaches for not just the students, but that will cause some issues for our financial aid offices locally, as well as my office in processing aid. Again, these are kind of some unicorn situations, but we'll still face them where a parent or a student may live with one parent the whole year. The separate parent may technically provide via child support more support for the student financially, but that parent may be living out of state. That will be an issue that we will address on residency sides, usually through an appeal. It'll be up to the institutions on how they handle that between the student address and what the parent contributor address ultimately says on this one. This flowchart will be available via the PowerPoint later on, so you'll have access to that, as well as if you've been in any of the webinars where it's been used historically. Additionally, to help parents go through this, the FAFSA will have a parent wizard, and it will help the student determine who they include on the FAFSA form. So that's just a quick shot of what that looks like for the 24-25 FAFSA. Excuse me. For marital status, just wanted to provide some information about what it will look like for students who are filing the FAFSA, what will be included for this year for 24-25. For a family who is married filing jointly, they'll be using the 22 tax return. And if with their current spouse, there will be one contributor needed, one level of consent, and the combined tax information will be transferred once there's consent via the FATX to the United States Department of Education for financial aid purposes. For married filing separately, a family will have two different contributors because both parents will have, both contributors, both parents, both guardians will have to consent to providing that their tax information. One parent on filing separately can't consent for the other parent. So there will be two contributors in this section, two consents, and tax information will be provided separately via the FATX. Single filing a 22 tax return with a single type, one contributor, one consent, transfers via the FATX. So you can see the different ways that this will be provided over to the Department of Education, as well as what will be needed for consent on that. Again, to work on the FAFSA or to submit the FAFSA and go through the process, all contributors, both the student and the parent, must have an FSA ID to access the form. There's an identity match required for each contributor to verify FAFSA ID. You'll see that here in a second. A verified email address will be required to establish the account, verified through a normal process that we've all received emails to verify our email. And users can apply this year without entering an SSN or a taxpayer identification number. And we'll talk about that here in a second. They must complete a knowledge-based identity verification process. Sorry, stumbled over my words there. Do so, and we would encourage you to work with your families to create FSA IDs early as possible. We've been doing this all fall. Invest has been doing yeoman's work all across the fall to get students and families to create these. We would encourage you to do this as well. They'll create an account at studentaid.gov. Individuals with Social Security numbers are confirmed by the Social Security Administration. For those without an SSN, they will launch with the 24-25 FAFSA. The FSA ID must be set up and confirmed before filing. This process, for the most part, is pretty quick. It is usually very quick. However, there are circumstances where it could take between 3 to even 7 days in certain circumstances. So we highly recommend creating the FSA ID prior to hosting these events and not having the student try to file the FAFSA on the same day. That way, if there are any issues with the FSA ID, they can come back the next time. They're not frustrated and walking away from filing. This has always been an issue in terms of some delay on the FSA ID. So this is nothing new, but we would encourage individuals to create the FSA ID early on. Additionally, reminding them to have their login information available. Do not use a school-based email. Use a personal email. Those traditional pieces of information. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but again, this PowerPoint will be available to you all, and we can have, and I highly encourage you to have follow-up events for your organizations with either a financial aid office, Invested, or us. If a parent does not have SSN, they will have a separate process, and students will check will check their parent does not have an SSN, and it will invite the parent to. And they'll be able to invite the parent to the FAFSA. Individuals will be asked up to 4 questions provided by a company called TransUnion, and the questions can be about previous address, what their phone numbers are, their loan amount. If the person answers correctly, so when they do this, they're going to want to know, if you're like me, I've lived in 4 different states and 15 different addresses in that time. So make sure you have all that information available. If they answer correctly, verify it immediately. You're going to move on to complete the FAFSA. If they're not able to verify that immediately, they will receive an email with instructions for a separate way to verify identity, either through attestation or directed to a FAFSA or an FSA information center. Case numbers will be sent directly to the individuals for submitting their form, and a copy of the items below are going to be needed. Now, this does sound complicated, but for most students, for most circumstances, this is actually going to be a much better process. And I know that with change, a lot of us get frustrated or stressed out, but historically, these individuals had to do something via paper. They could not go on the online form. But for thousands of individuals who are U.S. citizens, but their parents are not, they will have the opportunity to do this online and not have to go through a paper process. So as much as this does sound kind of like a Rube Goldberg, this will actually help many of our students who historically have had to go through some sort of mailing process for this. So we know that there will be hiccups with this, but this will, in my opinion, be a much better process for these families. I highly encourage you to use what the Federal Student Aid has provided us, which is a FAFSA prototype for 24-25. It is available at the website that we have below, and there is a access code to go in there. It is a demonstration site. I imagine there will be some minor changes to the FAFSA when it goes fully live. My guess at December 31st at 11:59 and 59 seconds, but you can use that website, and it is actually very useful, and it's very good to get you familiar with it, especially if you're going to be advising families through the process, or if you're going to be filing it yourself and you don't want to have to do it live for the first time, and if you're concerned about making a mistake, I'd walk through that process on the FAFSA prototype. This is the verification process that I mentioned earlier. If a student has an SSN, Social Security Administration will match it. If it's matches, users identified, move forward. If not, there's knowledge-based, and then there's ID proofing. Again, this will be available. I'm going to zoom through these last few slides because I want to leave some time for questions here. Other FAFSA updates, students can list up 20 colleges and universities. An incomplete FAFSA only stays on the system for 45 days, so they need to be able to go back and do that. The last contributor to provide information will have the opportunity to submit it. So in a parent or in a family with a student and 2 parents filing separately, the last parent to go in and do it will have the opportunity to submit the FAFSA on behalf of the student. Senate Enrolled Act 167 makes filing the FAFSA the default option for students. When we looked at our schools with high free and reduced lunch rates, they had much lower FAFSA filing rates, and many of those students missed out on a post-secondary education. When we looked at our schools with low free and reduced lunch rates, they actually had a very high FAFSA filing rate compared to those other schools. And it's not because the students who were in these low-income schools could not go into post-secondary education or had no interest in it. It's that other barriers got into the way, and it wasn't a priority. Senate Enrolled Act 167 makes sure that it is a priority for these students to go on to some post-secondary education and further their opportunities. Fortunately, the bill also provides very broad opt-out provisions for parents and guardians, emancipated students, students who have reached a major majority. Additionally, schools will be able to opt out their students who do not either file or opt out after April 15th. They do need to send 2 communications. Indiana will be the 7th state to have this requirement. When you look at other states, their FAFSA filing and college going rates have gone up, even when you look at the impact of the pandemic at that point in time. The opt-out form is available on the Commission's website. Students will be able to complete that. School counselors will record that when they submit their graduation details report at the end of the year. And the Commission will provide to the Department of Education information on those who filed, those who have opted themselves out, and those who the school opted out to be included, hopefully, on GPS in the coming years. Best practices, again, FSA ID in advance. Early awareness, one of the good things now is the Pell is actually based on adjusted gross income, not the EFC or SAI formula. So individuals will be able to see what their Pell amount potentially is earlier on. We'll be working to communicate that with our juniors in the coming years, junior class, because they'll be able to see that. Start identifying students who you think might have a special circumstance. And as always, encourage students to apply for scholarships early. College Goals Sunday will be February 25th. You can see the time, date, and location. And then if you need help to file the FAFSA, here are some resources on that. Two more things, and again, I'm currently 5 minutes, so I'm zooming through this if you can't tell. FAFSA completion report will be up and running after February 1st. The federal government will not be sending us information on filed FAFSAs until after February 1st. So if you're looking for your FAFSA completion report or the FAFSA filers and ScholarTrack, it will again be after February 1st. Those links are all available for you to look at. If your school doesn't have a FAFSA data share agreement, reach out to us. You can see that in ScholarTrack if you do or don't. And then finally, please contact us. Know who your outreach coordinators are. You can email us at schools or scholars at che.in.gov. And with that, I've left 4 minutes for questions. Again, apologize for zooming through the last little bit. So Allison, if you want to put any questions up. Is everyone required to create an FSA ID? If parents and students who have already have filed a previous year already have an FSA ID, do they need to create a new one? Nope, they will not need to create a new one. They can use their old one. My FSA ID will follow me until my current 5-year-old is done with his post-secondary education. So I got to go in every year and make sure I know the password and the email that I use with that one. So thankfully it was a regular email and not my high school email. So yeah, that will work for those individuals. With the delay in the 24-25 FAFSA rollout, is it still expected that high school seniors complete the FAFSA? If so, what assistance is being given to schools to make this happen? Yep. So it is still expected that school or students will file the FAFSA. If you remember, and what's kind of interesting is when the FAFSA, well, I guess I may be playing it fast and loose with the word interesting, but what I find interesting is that whenever we had the January 1st FAFSA start date, we actually had higher FAFSA filing rates than we had when it moved back to October. The supports that we'll be providing to schools are many of the things that I listed. Invest is doing events every night. We at the commission have our outreach coordinators out in the field, as well as a broad communication strategy, going out either in social and direct messaging when we have individuals and direct mailing. So we will be going to do that. Additionally, via ScholarTrack, every school after February 1st will be able to see who has and has not completed the FAFSA so that they can target that population rather than having to just kind of reach out to everybody continuously. But yes, it is still a requirement. Can non-citizens students opt out prior to April 15th? Students can opt out right now by completing the form, but that will be uploaded in the graduation details. So that form can be completed at any point in time. I'm going to be completely frank here. We had numerous counselors say they were going to opt out their students during registration night, every single student that they had. So that FAFSA opt-out form will be launched every October 1st going forward. We occasionally have some families that would qualify for, however, they opt not to apply for that program. Is that how you're auto-enrolling those students? Only those on free and reduced lunch are you pulling elsewhere? So historically, it's free and reduced lunch and book book waivers has been one of those. This is always going to be a problem. This is a population that we missed prior to auto enrollment. This is a population that will be difficult for us to find post auto enrollment. We're hoping that the other means tested benefits that we're going to eventually be using will work on this one, but we do know that we've caught 27,000 more freshmen, roughly 25,000 more eighth graders on that. And one more question. Will we get instructions on where to enter the waiver form? I've already received one. Yes, that will be done via the graduation details report. We ask that you hold on to that. In future years, we may make it so the student can just upload that in ScholarTrack. We are happy to talk with counselors on how we make that process as easy as possible. And I believe I can do one more before we get cut off here. Yep. All right. And then did you say the AGI may override small business and farm, including assets? Yes, if you are below $60,000 in AGI, you do not have to report assets on that. So that will be a workaround. We do anticipate broad bipartisan support in Congress to get this addressed. It may be one of the few things that gets broad bipartisan support when it comes to post-secondary education. So we look forward to that change happening. I believe we are at time here. I want to thank everyone for joining the session, for the questions that you have. feel free to reach back out to the emails that we have on the screen, or my emails online. Feel free to email or call me directly. Again, appreciate y'all joining us. Thank you.